Hello, my name is Chad Carpenter, and I draw the comic strip Tundra. Welcome to my studio/goat barn. That's right, it's a goat barn. I consider this kind of like Tundra 2.0, a whole new world, and I'm excited about it. Very excited about it. Now, I'm going to draw a cartoon, of course, and we will probably be interrupted occasionally by crackers and cheese. They are the goats that live here in the barn, so just when they show up, you'll probably recognize them because they're goats. One thing I get a lot is people ask me how I got started doing what I do, and it's actually pretty simple. It's just something I've drawn. You know, I've always drawn since I was a child, and I've always enjoyed it. And but when I was 10 years old, that's when I discovered Garfield. And the way that happened was I was sitting in music class, and I heard some laughing behind me. I heard there's a kid named Kevin that was sitting behind me in music class, and he was laughing at something. And I turned and looked, and he had this little red book with a cat on it, and that was Garfield's very first book. I'd never heard of Garfield until then. And I noticed also that Kevin had two girls on either side of him, and they were leaning over his shoulder and reading the book, and they were laughing at the same time he was reading. And then I thought to myself, girls must like comics. So then I thought, if I draw comics, wow, that'll be, I knew what so that's when I decided I was going to be a cartoonist. And sadly, though, it turns out that the girls were just kind of hanging out with Kevin because he was just a cool guy, and the cartooning had nothing to do with it. So I started drawing cartoons all the time, but and I had an audience. I had a captured audience. I had my friends in high school, and then eventually I graduated high school, of course, and I lost my audience. We all just kind of went our own separate ways, college or jobs or wherever we went, and I realized that how special it was to have an audience, and I really missed it. And so I thought, you know what? I should probably, if I'm going to be a cartoonist, I better start doing something about it and trying to make it happen. But I didn't know what to do because, I live in Alaska. And there weren't a lot of cartoonists up here. Not a lot. In fact, I don't think there were any syndicated cartoonists up here at the time. So there's nobody I could talk to. Nobody I could ask for advice. There was no special, at least as far as I knew, no cartooning school about how to get syndicated in newspapers. Didn't really exist. But what I did have, and it turns out, is I had an uncle in Sarasota, Florida. And in Sarasota also happened to be, at the time, this was like the mid to late... Sorry about that. This was like the mid to late 80s, and most of the cartoonists that I read anyway had homes in Sarasota, or they went to Sarasota frequently because it was just kind of where all the cartoonists liked to meet. And I thought, well, that's where I need to be. And that's also where my uncle lived. So my uncle knew I was a cartoonist or a wannabe cartoonist, and he said, hey, why don't you move down here to Sarasota and work in my art gallery? And I'll introduce you to some of the cartoonists that he knows, that I know. And he knew Dick Brown and did Hagar the Horrible. And when I moved to Sarasota, I met Dick Brown on a golf course. I was with my uncle, and just Dick Brown happened to be there. And my uncle said, hey, there's Dick Brown. He does Hagar the Horrible, of course. So why don't you go introduce yourself to him? I would go to Dick Brown's studio and watch him draw Hagar the Horrible. And that, to me, was like a dream come true. It was fantastic. I couldn't believe I was actually there. He really helped me. He told me the technical parts of being a cartoonist, taught me that, which is pen, paper. I always tell kids, when I go to schools, I like to talk to kids about how I got started, of course, and I always tell them, you have all the tools you need right now to be a cartoonist. You got paper, pen, ruler, whiteout. I use a lot of whiteout. I make a lot of mistakes, even after 33 years of doing this. And then the rest was pretty much up to me, and that was to draw a lot of comic strips, send them to some syndicates, try to get the syndicates to notice me and pick me up and possibly try to get me in newspapers around the world. Well, didn't happen. Didn't happen right away anyway. I ended up getting to know also Mike Peters, who does Mother Goose and Grimm. He's the one that draws little Grimmy, the yellow dog Grimmy. And he's the one that told me, I asked him one day, I said, how do you come up with a comic strip you can draw day after day without getting tired of drawing it, or just without running out of ideas. And he said to draw what you know. And so it was 1991. I drove back home. I drew 6 weeks worth of comic strips and went to the Anchorage Daily News. And I met with the features editor at the time. I left that meeting thinking, I'm never going to hear from this guy again. Well, about a week later, he called me up and he said, hey, I showed him around. People seem to like him. So we'll give it a shot. We'll start running it and see how it goes. I think it was December 2nd, 1991 is the first Tundra strip ran the paper in the Anchorage Daily News. And Cartoonist then. But of course, at the same time, I realized, well, it's great, but the goats are button heads over here. Looks like it hurts. All right, guys, I'm going to throw them. Hang on, I'm going to throw these goats out of here. Come on, get out. Get out. Get, go out there. But, it's hard to make a living at that time, or any time probably, in just one newspaper. So I thought, well, I need to branch out. I need to get in other papers. And I did. I was able to get in pretty easily in a lot of Alaska newspapers. That part was nice, that I was able to get in some Fairbanks, Juneau, Sitka, the biggies here in Alaska. And that was it for the first 14 years. I was only in those papers. It wasn't until I had a friend of mine, Bill Kellogg, who had a lot of talent as a salesman. He was a good salesman, still is. He said, hey, why don't you let me take Tundra out on the road and see if I can get other newspaper editors to pick it up. And at that point, like I said, it was 14 years later, so it was like 2005. And I thought, well, if I don't do it, I'm always going to wonder, what if I had done it? Maybe it would have worked. And I couldn't live with the thought of not trying at least. And so Bill went out, took the 3-week trip, didn't pick up a single paper. Not a one. Didn't work. But the good thing was the editors that he talked to gave us such good reviews of the strip itself. They seemed to really like the strip. The problem was I wasn't syndicated by one of the big syndicates. I was self-syndicated, or at least trying to be self-syndicated. Well, I was self-syndicated in Alaska. Syndicates were very reliable. They proofread everything for the cartoonist. They made sure the cartoonist got his work done on time. All that stuff. And here I was, just a guy in Alaska, a young kid in Alaska. So they really didn't put a lot of faith in, and they had no reason to put a lot of faith into that I was going to follow through and deliver what I said I would. Because of that, Bill and I talked a lot more about, what do we do? How do we go from here? What do we do? Do we just give up? We said, let's do one more trip and see how it goes. The first paper we picked up was Ogden, Utah. And then on that trip, we also picked up Colorado Springs, and that's a pretty good sized paper. And then once we started picking up a few other little papers here and there, other editors were a lot more willing to give us a chance. And this went on for a while. It went on for a year or two. We'd pick up papers here and there, and soon we had 135 papers. And that's when the LA Times called me, and actually they called Bill, and they said, hey, we've seen this comic strip Tundra. It's in a lot of papers. We've noticed people are paying attention to it. We'd like to run it in our paper. Well, LA Times is the biggest newspaper that runs comics. The New York Times is a bigger paper, but they don't run comics. But the LA Times does. So they picked me up. And once the LA Times picked me up, it was like the floodgates opened. And other papers were just a lot more rapidly picking me up, and I was getting great reviews and all that kind of stuff. So it grew. It really grew. And I believe the peak of Tundra was we had 650 papers, and then COVID happened, wiped out a lot of papers, and so then we dropped down to probably around 500 or so, which is still respectable. And I'm happy with it, still thrilled with it, but print media is having trouble. Print media is dying. And I'm very grateful for my print media that I have and that have supported me all these years. However, I also see the writing on the wall, and it's time to go digital. And I've known that for a while now, but that's why, part of the reason why I'm doing this right here, going digital. And that's why I have a Patreon page, of course, Facebook, website, web store, all that kind of stuff, which will probably be linked into this somehow, I don't know. But it's go digital or die pretty much nowadays. If you're a cartoonist or pretty much any kind of artist nowadays, you got to really hammer the digital aspect of things. So I consider this kind of like Tundra 2.0. It's a whole new world, and I'm excited about it. Very excited about it. So we'll be making more of these videos, and I'll be telling you more of stories of how it all began and how it started and how I stay creative and how I get my ideas and all that kind of stuff. And in the meantime, this is pretty much how it's done. I draw it like that, and I do some other magical things, and before you know it, I got a full-blown comic strip that's going to be in the newspapers, it's going to be digital, it's going to be anywhere I can make a buck. So, thanks for watching, appreciate it very much. Hang out with me again here in the Goat Barn sometime soon. In the meantime, thank you so much, and we will see you next time. Hang on, I'm going to let him back in. Behave yourselves, guys. I don't have anything for you. Guys! Stop!